Let's get into the listener and viewer mailbag. If you have something to say, it's info@davidpakman.com. Sometimes we will highlight a YouTube comment or a tweet or what else? Could be anything, but it's mostly emails sent to info@davidpakman.com. We're going to start today with Norma Jean. Norma Jean is upset. I find these emails a little funny. Norma Jean wrote in and said about Michael Cohen with a sad face. Hi, David. I discovered your show on TikTok and have been listening to your podcast ever since. Thank you for being a voice of reason in a crazy time. Look forward to subscribing. One question. I was surprised that you would have agreed to be on Michael Cohen's podcast. Can you clarify and talk a little about why you chose to be on his podcast, given his sketchy past to include tax and bank fraud, in addition to being disbarred by the New York Supreme Court? Yikes. How does he have any credibility left? Thank you. Yeah, listen, appearing on a show is not an endorsement of everything that person has done. And if you go down this path, sort of like, where do you draw the line? I mean, I'm sure everybody who's interviewed me has lied. Some of them have also cheated on their significant others. That arguably could be a reason for me to refuse to appear on some other shows. I mean, this isn't how I think about things, you know? You get invited to lots of shows, and the question is it worthwhile speaking to the audience of that show? And the answer with Michael Cohen's show was yes. So I appeared on the show. It's really just that. It doesn't mean that I think it was okay when Michael Cohen committed bank fraud or when some other interviewer, cheated on their spouse, as many of the people that have interviewed me have. I'm not endorsing anything in particular. I'm just doing the show. So I would just say, don't think too much about that. Maybe I'll just leave it there. Andrew wrote in and said, also, be fun to see you respond to this on one of your videos. Don't you will, as it is one of your fake emails. At the beginning, I felt your channel had potential, but you went extreme left and you now becoming a failure. No wonder you need to endorse businesses that are scam for money. You are desperate. You know what's really funny? This is a really common. So I've talked about unsubscribed trolls, right? Which are, now I'm unsubscribing. And it's like, you were never subscribed. This one is, I used to have positive feelings about your show, but because of the things you did, I no longer do. I went back and checked out the email history. The reason we keep all emails that are sent in, sometimes because law enforcement needs them. I know that that's really sad, but unfortunately in this era, when you've been doing this as long as we've been doing it and your audience is a certain size, it starts to become likely that some of your viewers are going to be entangled with law enforcement. And we keep all records in case we may at some point need to turn them over to law enforcement. But also just to see, for example, Andrew has been writing in literally for years, and every email has been riddled with insults and pejoratives and all sorts of stuff. He never thought the channel had potential. He's been insulting me since day one. And the other funny thing is, now you're becoming a failure. The show is bigger today than it has ever been before. Might have been better earlier to say your show will never be bigger or something like that. But okay, that's Andrew. Very, very important message. Trolle wrote in and said, Trump claims he can't be anti-Semitic because he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. So many Christians also seem to claim to love Israel, but they hate Jews. Many fundamentalist Christians believe it is their duty to bring about Armageddon as a step to bring about the rapture. Do you think the president actually did it to placate these people, as Jerusalem becoming the capital is a step in that goal? Excellent question. I've explained so many times. American Jews are very liberal, one of the most left-wing voting blocs in the United States. And yet you often hear, but what about Republicans as the supporters of Israel? Republicans support Israel in a very narrow way that is connected to the evangelical beliefs about, as this email is pointing out, the rapture, Armageddon, the second coming of Jesus, etc., etc. They don't like, or like isn't even the right word. They aren't about the Jewish people, as a culture, as a community. They believe their teachings, in which Jews and Israel have a particular role to play in Jesus coming back and rapture and Armageddon and all of this other crazy stuff. And yes, the Jerusalem thing is part of that. I don't know that Trump had any idea about that. Trump's view most likely was, the people on my side who talk to me about Israel want the embassy in Jerusalem. So that's good. And that's probably as far as Trump really is aware, but a very good question and very accurately pointed out there. Michael wrote in about oversimplification of political issues. And this is also a good topic. Says, David started watching a few months ago, really liked the show. Have you ever noticed how many right-wing positions are based on gross oversimplification of the issues? Climate change. It still snows, therefore global warming is a hoax. Gender. Just look between your legs. Poverty, just work harder. Immigration, just come in legally. Mental illness, just snap out of it. Systemic oppression, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Abortion, it's always murder. STDs, just don't have sex. COVID vaccine, you still get COVID, so it's useless. Homelessness, go to a shelter. Drug addiction, just stop using. And it makes sense. You have to be that out of touch with how things work for everyday people to be a right-winger. Yeah, this is a big academic topic, and Michael may have stumbled upon this on his own, but people like George Lakoff and others have talked about how the framing that the right uses for so many issues is linguistically advantageous, and it contributes to this simplicity. We need tax relief. Taxes are a burden. Lower taxes, people are relieved. That's good, right? But you can't lower them to zero, then society ceases to function. Abortion. Well, I'm pro-life. Everybody else must be against life. Life is good. So this is actually a really big topic in the American political divide. And Michael is completely right that the only way that you would believe this stuff is if you really are out of touch or lack information, or, we've talked about the different categories, but this is a feature of Republican politics, not a bug, because it makes it so that completely untenable political positions seem almost viable to some people by virtue of their fabricated simplicity. Michael wrote in about conservative checkmate and says, you should benefit from how you are registered to vote. If you register as a conservative, I guess Michael means a Republican, you get to keep your total wage and pay no taxes, but in return, you get no services, no police, no fire, no health care. You would have to pay out of pocket for those services. If you register as a Democrat, you pay 30 to 40% in taxes, but you get health care, Social Security, fire, police, etc. Would conservatives be okay with this idea? Now, I know that I think anyway, that this is a thought experiment from Michael, and it's one we've explored before. In practice, I don't know what the average right-winger would say. Listen, you get to keep all your money, but you've got to pay for every road that you use. I mean, it sort of starts to become kind of like one of these libertarian utopias, which don't work at all. I don't know what they would say, but obviously we all know that this type of thinking is completely impossible for any functioning society. But it'd be a curious one to ask them about for sure. Anthony wrote in from Spain and says, I'm a longtime fan from Spain. Sorry for my English. It's my fourth language. A little subtle brag there. I wanted to ask you if you've ever considered doing some Spanish language videos. I want to recommend you to some of my acquaintances who do not believe me when I tell them about how bad US politics are. I also hear there's loads of disinformation in Spanish, both here and in the US, and I don't know of any Spanish-speaking equivalent to your show. I know it would probably have lower ROI, but you are one of the few that could reach that public without sounding condescending since you're a native Spanish speaker. So we've been looking to do this for a while. I just don't have any time in my day to produce content in Spanish in addition to what I'm doing. But we are about to launch a dubbed version of our clips to Spanish. So you'll see me. The voice will be dubbed into Spanish. And I know. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. I just don't have any more time, guys. We've got the live streams. and we've got the podcast and the YouTube channel and the finance channel. And, my daughter is needing diaper changes. I thought I only needed like 3 diapers for the entire first year. It turns out you need way more than 3 diapers for that. It's crazy. I can't do more content in Spanish. So we're going to be doing a dubbing thing. I think it could do quite well. And I'll tell you more about it when it launches. Landon wrote in about Trump and says past presidents have airports named after them. Perhaps a prison can be named after Trump. Of course, preferably with him locked inside. Nice one, Landon. That's a presented without comment. I won't even comment on that. And then Dwayne wrote in about voter fraud and says, David, I'm curious as to how many cases of voter fraud that have been prosecuted from 2020 to the end of 22 have been Republicans compared to Democrats. I keep seeing a case, it seems like every other week, and it is not a Democrat. It's as if any claim a Republican makes of a crime is basically an admission of a crime they have done. I may not be a smart man, but I know I'm seeing a pattern here. Thank you, Dwayne. Yeah, so, part of this is, does some voter fraud go under the radar? But of the prosecuted cases in the U.S., and there are very few, it is overwhelmingly Republicans. And it's often Republicans trying to prove a point, and then the point they prove is the opposite. They want to prove how easy it is to get away with it. Then they get caught. Sometimes some Republicans were caught genuinely voting twice, like in some cases, a dead relative. We've seen these things anecdotally. Big picture, there's very little voter fraud happening. At the micro level, for those who get prosecuted, it is mostly Republicans. Dwayne is absolutely correct. Send in your thoughts, comments, questions to info@davidpakman.com. Sign up at joinpakman.com to get all of our great member benefits, including instant access to the bonus show, which you could go watch or listen to right now if you were already a member.